One of your passions outside of architecture, Helen, is writing small novels. I always thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I could pick up one of your novels, which was about architecture, and a cheat sheet for clients?
I think it would be like the client's guide. Now we have a client's guide that's a kind of, this is the, the steps we want to take you through, but one that goes into more detail about the whole process, because I think for a lot of our clients, they're doing their project for the first time and they have to learn everything.
You see it happening, you're listening to the answer and you're going, I've seen this before.
Because I had someone give me a one-to-one scale drawing of the inside of their cutlery drawer.
I look around your studio, which is a collage of material, past projects, design files, sketches on your walls. How do you take a project from blank piece of paper to finished article? It's always tricky.
I think how we like to start a project is always the very first meeting with a client. I mean, that is so important in understanding what makes them tick, understanding what their brief is, and really the starting point of the journey of extracting maybe even the things they didn't even know made or will make their project successful. Because once we have those sort of raw ingredients, that's what we're really using to drive our design process and help create something that hopefully our clients will be really happy with at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess the client comes to you with an idea that they need to do a building project. Sometimes they've got a very clear idea of what they want. I want a 6-metre extension. Sometimes they come to you with, I bought this flat, it's a mess. It's in the right area, it's not for me, what do I do? Can range from vague to precise, but actually, I think you've got to address all of that whole range in the same way. Like you said, trying to get to know the client and their priorities. And that's a really important step because that's the thing that they're the expert in. They know what they need better than you do. But sometimes what they come to you with what they think they want isn't always what you're going to end up with.
Is it easier if they come to you with a predisposed position of what they want? Or is it easier if they come with a complete blank piece of paper and go, I've seen some of your work, I like the kind of style that you do?
I mean, it's good when a client has an affinity to you and likes what makes you tick. But I think, and then they obviously need to have something about what they want to change, whether it's a new build house on a plot they bought, or whether it's just extending because they've had a child and they need to expand the space they've got. But that's much easier for an architect to deal with, to sort of go, I need one more bedroom, I need an open plan living space, like, where do I put it? Not saying I must have this particular sort of space. That's restrictive and doesn't necessarily, I think, lead to the design.
It can be a good conversation starter because someone can come to you and say, I need a rear extension. And you go, okay, why? And then they'll say, because I need somewhere to put the utility room, or because my back kitchen is really dark. And then you can go away and you can kind of think about that. And sometimes the option is to put a rear extension on, but sometimes it might be just to rethink the space they've got. Why is it really dark? Is it because you just blocked off what used to be the main window with a utility room previously? Is it because the orientation of the house hasn't got the rooms in the right place? Do you actually just need to knock through or remodel? Sometimes some of the most satisfying options you can come up with is where they don't even have to do a lot of building. It's just a bit of rearranging, re-strategizing. I think that's the thinking that goes into, like, thinking architecturally. It's about thinking about the space and the quality of what's already there and trying to enhance that. Sometimes that does mean building, not always.
So actually sometimes building less is the best answer.
That can give you the best value sometimes.
Yeah. And value, I guess, is such a big driving force. I guess a lot come with very tight budgets, and then it's trying to work out maximizing that space and maximizing the outcome.
Yeah, because every client has a tight budget, even if it's a big one, it's always tight.
Always a bit of a nightmare. One of your passions outside of architecture, Helen, is writing small novels.
Oh, right.
I always thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I could pick up one of your novels, which was about architecture, and a cheat sheet for clients? And if you did write there, what would it say?
I think it would be like the client's guide. Now we have a client's guide that's a kind of, this is the, the steps we want to take you through, but one that goes into more detail about the whole process, because I think for a lot of our clients, they're doing their project for the first time and maybe for the last time, and they have to learn everything as they go along. And you can give them a lot of information, like at the first meeting, and you can write it down for them, but it's still a lot. So I think I'd quite like to write the book about how to kind of project manage your own project almost. And I know there are sort of like crib sheets like that out there, but maybe my own version.
How to be a client.
How to be a client, yeah.
It's a bit like the pitfalls of being a client, because there must be a literacy of mistakes that you see where just you see it happening, you're listening to the answer and you're going, I've seen this before. It always ends up in a particularly poor scenario. And then you got to try and explain it. And it's just, you're almost having to coach each one of your clients to avoid those massive pitfalls. And I guess not all of them miss them.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think that sort of signal for me would be when a client starts trying to draw themselves. And not to say they can't and they shouldn't, but often that leads you down that kind of like focus route where you're not letting the architect kind of explore. I think the most extreme example of this was I had someone give me a 1-to-1 scale drawing of the inside of their cutlery drawer once, just so that the spoons and the forks were orientated the right way. And I think that's too much. I think if you're sort of forcing your architect to do that kind of level of sort of micromanagement, you're not going to get the best result.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of maybe a manifestation of an anxiety of some sort, like not being able to fully trust the process. And I don't blame someone for that, because everyone's new to it when they do it for the first time, aren't they? And actually, if your cutlery drawer is really important, you want to get it right, then it's fair. But like the flip side, like the kind of more positive aspect of the same comment is don't be afraid to ask for what you really want, even if you think you can't have it, because you don't know until you
Yeah, that's our job to try to find a way of making that.
Yeah, like you might think, oh, I haven't got room for a sewing room or a utility room or something, but actually maybe you do, and that's the whole point of having an architect.
I guess step one then is try to extract that, almost the creativity from the client to navigate their life and what they really want now. And then it's for you to kind of piece those bits together. And then what happens during that journey? So you now got a brief, and you now know they've got 300 pounds of trainers that needs to probably outside, whether that's on site or off site, that's up to them. How do you then develop that? I mean, that's what. Hey, I'm a builder. I cannot do what you do. What is that process? How many iterations are you doing? How are you exploring? Are you walking down the streets drawing in inspiration?
I would say it's not as free-flowing. It's a bit more prescribed a process. It's free-flowing between the steps, but we actually have two. Well, you say we've got a brief. I'd say that's an initial brief. I'd say there's two more steps before we have a concept design. The first step of that is options, where we explore different ways of achieving the brief or maximising the brief or going beyond the brief or sometimes compromising on the brief with options, usually as 2D layout options, but there can be different ways of showing it. And then we have a meeting with the client to show those. And we do try and do wildcard options where we do minimal intervention or things they haven't thought of. And the point of that is to really challenge the brief and really make sure that everything's been thought of. We've covered all bases and we're getting maximum value out of this process.
I think also it's making sure that when they're looking at the options and the iterations you've given them, that they are, you're almost forcing them to have a reaction to everything you're presenting. So you need that feedback because you want to extract what they like or dislike from everything you present to them, so that the next time you do it, it's better, it's more refined, it's likely to be a better bit of design.
The last kind of stage of that is where we get all the feedback and we hopefully have a preferred option or extracts of various options or even something else not drawn, and you can consolidate it into a coordinated, buildable concept design in 3D that we can show the client, and we can show it in different ways in 2D plan format. We can show where all the things they require are. We can show them how the light gets in, how you circulate it, and then we can show them models for it, like these models here and 3D drawings like these up here, I think are kind of that, although they're options still, but yeah, what it would actually look like. And then they can just say yes, or usually yes, but tweak this slightly.
You mentioned compromise before reading the brief. What does that mean?
I suppose, everything's a balance. Some things conflict, some things complement, and those will occur in different ways on different sites with different constraints. And then you get into the nitty-gritty of what's the priority. Like, is the priority having a bigger kitchen versus a better kitchen view out the window or something like that, for example? And that decision at some point might have to be made because to try and get the best out of the site, because maybe you can have a bit of everything, but that isn't as good as having all of the thing that's most important and putting some priorities further down the list.
Do you have a good example of a project where the compromises you presented actually really changed the client's view of what they ended up having, and they appreciated it?
Something that could be a surprising one is we did a flat refurbishment in a listed building in Westminster, and the client bought it as a 2-bedroom flat, but their priority was entertaining, having a great living space. And what we actually ended up doing was swapping one of the bedrooms out, making a larger master suite in the basement, which was a completely private area, and completely opening up all the ground floor spaces so you had light going front to back, and restoring the elegance of the Georgian building, kind of early Victorian building that had been lost. And it resulted on paper as having one less bedroom. It became a 1-bedroom flat. And that could be technically thought of as a compromise, but the dividends it paid back to the client, it was the right thing to do.
They were happy to lose a bedroom for all the positives that they got.
Yeah.
But it wasn't part of the brief when they came to them.
I think, to be fair, they were probably open to it. I think they knew that maybe there was space to put the other bedroom. We could have put it on the kind of outrigger bit as well, but we made that into a study space. Again, that's the way they wanted to live.
Yeah, it's unlikely that project would have ended up the same way with a different client, and I think that's what that we certainly tried to pride ourselves in is if you do listen, you do engage correctly with a client, you get something that's bespoke to them.
Contractors operate in a competitive environment, and I'm imagining you do as well.
Yeah.
How do you compete? What makes you stand out from your competitors? Is there a particular USP that you try and convey to those clients that they would choose you over somebody else?
I think that kind of connection with the client is really important when you first go meet them, and whether you've done that online or we always try to do that face to face, because I think you're more likely to build a lasting connection with someone face to face. I think that's really important. I think it's trying to understand what makes them tick, but hopefully our work speaks for itself, and we're sort of explaining how our process might be different to others. Might give them more choice, more flexibility, hopefully lead to better design and something they're happy with at the end of the day.
Architecture is renowned for clients not valuing what an architect brings to the table. Do you find the fact that it's so competitive and you're having to go at a cost level that is competitive against your peers, which does that then constrain your creativity and the amount of time that you can give to that project?
Yeah, I think on the whole, there's a certain level of commitment you need to make to a project to actually do it justice. And there are some things that are nice to have that you can have on top, like an interior design service, but to actually coordinate a project, I think there is a minimum amount of commitment you need to give it. And so I think we've learned that we can say no if clients want to take too much out. It's not feasible.
When does that creativity stop? Does it stop when you leave the office?
I think we might answer this career question differently. I think for me, I find it quite hard to sort of turn off. So, on the train home or whatever hour of day, then I'll be thinking about it. I'll be sort of, well, is that detail right? Oh, look, you notice something on the way home that is a new material or a new building you hadn't noticed before. But I think maybe you like to switch off a bit more.
I do. I compartmentalize, and I try not to think about work when I'm not at work. No, not that I don't like work. I really enjoy my work. That's why I do it. But there's a time and a place for it. And I don't want to sometimes I do get caught out with inspiration. I'm like, oh no, I haven't got my notebook. It's really annoying.
Something, actually, that would be perfect.
Yeah. Or sometimes you do kind of wake up in the morning and be like, I solved the conundrum. Like the other, about last week, I was like, we were having a bit of a quandary about this wall that wasn't really in budget to replaster. We were like, we really should do it. How are we going to do it? And then it just occurred to me that we should just take out the superfluous door from it, and then we could afford it. It was just like, woke up, I was like, we should get rid of the door. Do you want a coffee?
Or else you try a compartmentalize.
I think that's the case for anyone who does something that's their passion, that they really engage in. You can't just sort of leave it at the door on the way out and get on with your life. I think it does sort of consume you a little bit.
Alex, you present at multiple trade shows as a visiting expert. What are the typical questions that you get asked? Is there a common theme?
There's a few common themes. I think it might be, there at a trade show, there's lots of exciting new materials and ways of constructing. So often the question is, can I use this on my project? And unfortunately, the answer is often no, because
Such as?
I don't know, like a SIPS panel, kind of structure insulated panel system, and someone's got a terraced house, and they're like, well, this product is great in a field where there's lots of sort of the components can be replicated and there's an economy of scale, but on a tight urban terrace site, it's just not the right kind of material.
How much of your career or learning did really happen in that university setting, or how much of it really comes from life experience, building people's properties, discussing and extracting those visions? As an engineer, I think I'd have got more out of it with a few weeks setting the scene at university and then immediately into practice, and then coming away almost like an NVQ style scenario for many in the construction industry.
Practical element. I mean, if you were going to try and implement something like that, you've got to consider, like, how would you actually deliver it? Is there the space and the funds in industry to support a huge amount of like apprenticeship type roles as there is at the moment? The first time you do something like that is after 3 years at university, when you have reached a certain level of professionalism in some respect. So you are kind of office ready in some senses, still a lot to learn. But if you were to say everyone in the first 3 years has to do an apprenticeship, and it's like, where would the funding come for that? Where would the places come from? It's not an easy one to solve overnight, although we could sit here and say it needs to happen. I'd like to think that people are thinking about it, but
you're both partners of ABHRA. Would you not see the benefit of having someone that's decided to embark on that journey and they're coming in raw, but no doubt cheap because of that as well, being an intern? Well, where would they fit in the practice, or actually it just wouldn't work and they need at least some level of understanding before they're going to do any use?
Some level, yes. I mean, we do we have had part ones in the past, and they take a lot of training. And then the worst part of that for us is when, after a year of them getting used to the procedures and how to do their job really efficiently, they then go back to university. And you kind of feel a bit like, oh, you've given back to them and the industry, but maybe not to your own business so much, because you've invested in the training. But sometimes they come back, and that's great though. But
yeah, it's an interesting experience. They come and you help them and they're helping you. They disappear.
Yeah.
How do you retain? How do you encourage them to keep coming back and supporting you as you support them?
I think it's sort of it's imparting knowledge, it's teaching, it's trying to create a space and exposure to work and process that is exciting to them, and hopefully when they come back and they're only a small step away from being a qualified architect, they can take more control, and they can have more responsibility to sort of deliver projects themselves. I think that's a sort of what you need.
Yeah, I think that's
something angle.
As quite a small practice we can offer students, because there is a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of diversity in the work we do. We've mostly been talking about working with domestic clients. We don't just work with domestic clients, we do public work, we've done schools and refurbishments for councils. If you want to get into the nitty gritty of fire compliance, there's opportunities to do that here. If you want to get into interior design and colours of clients, you could do that here. You could do contract administration, there's a lot of different things, and you kind of overhear all the conversations and the problems, and you can pitch in as well in a way that is probably harder to do in a larger practice, although it still happens. You'll always be part of a smaller group in a bigger pond.
Is it a significant difference in skill set that you have to apply to residential versus a commercial or public setting?
I don't think so.
No, I think it mostly comes down to how you deal with the client, because often with a domestic client, you have perhaps a couple, and they've got very strong ideas about how they want their house, their project to be. Whereas you're dealing in a more commercial or for a council client, you're perhaps dealing with multiple stakeholders that have very different requirements. So there will be different elements to the client team, and how you treat them and what they need to make decisions will be very different. So I think it's just trying to understand who's making decisions and what they need to make the right decisions. Is the main difference. I think
the question you asked was about skill set, and I think the real skill is in understanding the people that you're working for and what they need, and strategizing your way through the process. That's the skill set. But for every project, it's a different set of knowledge you need.
Yeah, we were asked quite recently a pitch, for a charity, how would you approach a charity client differently to a commercial one or a private one? Like, well, we do it the same because every client is different. We need to find out how they work and what they need. So I don't think it makes much of a difference, really. It's part of our process.
Having two principals of a practice, how do you find that dynamic between the two of you? Do you often align, or do you often end up juxtaposed? And if that's the case, do you think you end up with a better quality service because of it?
I think we're relatively similar architecturally, like what makes us tick. I think we're both quite technically focused, and we like engaging with the history of the building, and the character and perhaps the period details that the host building has. But yeah, we are obviously going to disagree on some things, and perhaps there's no.
Yeah. Well, it's okay to disagree, because sometimes you can use that as a vehicle to hash out what the best solution actually is. If you can somehow arrange an argument to be constructive, that's possible. And then on the other hand, we've got to just have our own areas to focus on, our own jobs as well. But I think, yeah, you're right. Like, the overall philosophy is the same. We've got the same aspiration for every job, but we can discuss the details.
I think, going back to the question, you sort of, if you've got two people running a company, then there is always someone to bounce ideas off. It's not a unilateral decision, and there is a process that allows us to make sure that the decisions of the design is right. That perhaps if I'd done this on my own, or you'd done this on your own, we get it right less often, because there isn't two minds thinking over some of these key decisions.
Yeah, and how do you decide what is perfection in architecture?
There's no such thing. Nothing's ever finished. Nothing's ever perfect. Because even if theoretically you could make the perfect house in the perfect setting for the perfect client, even if it was possible, tomorrow's another day with a different environment and a different circumstance and a different politicians in power, different economy, different neighbours. Things are always changing. Nothing's ever perfect.
Most exciting project you've ever worked on?
Oh, don't.
For ourselves or for others?
Yeah, at any point in your career.
You go first.
No, I don't know. It changes all the time. Often I'm working on something and I think this is the most exciting project ever, just because I'm working on it now.
Why? Just because
I'm excited about it, because it's current.
But what makes an exciting project for you? What makes you go, God, this is going to be fun?
Do you know, I think it's probably the quantity of people and the impact it has on them. So, like, I think some of the most rewarding buildings I've done has been schools, because kids really appreciate good architecture. It gets them excited. They're like, yeah, this is the best. You never get like normal clients saying that. They'll be like, yeah, we really like it. But kids love it. And then you get a new class of 30 kids every year coming into that classroom. So the impact it has just builds and builds and gets bigger all the time. I think I really enjoy working for private clients, especially on listed or historic buildings. It's very technically gratifying, but it's probably only 2 or 3 people getting the benefit of that in the immediate future. So I think I get excited when I feel I can have more impact.
Yeah, where you're going to engage with more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would agree that. And so for me, I was fortunate enough to work on the Aquatic Centre in the 2012 Olympics. And I think that has the same sort of impact. 17,500 people there, during the Olympics, all enjoying the space that you were a part of designing.
Yeah.
That's incredibly satisfying. And that project, we were fortunate at the time to have the ability to really push the boundaries of what's possible in terms of design. So I think impact and sort of space to really create something interesting.
Does those scale of projects allow you that greater breadth of creativity, where you can explore so many more materials and so many different uses of those areas?
They can do. I think where that project benefited was because it was for the Olympics, the budget and the aspiration for something that's going to be recognised globally, as potentially as an iconic building. You need a certain level of aspiration and money to be able to achieve that. But sometimes that's not always possible, particularly for something like the schools and some of the schools projects we're involved in at the moment. It's no, it's a lot more modest what's possible, but that doesn't mean you can't aim and shoot for good design and really try to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah, I suppose with these things, like, it's a bit like saying nothing's ever perfect. It's like the design you design one day, you're going on this journey where you've got to make it happen in some form eventually, and it isn't always exactly this version of it. But so long as you retain its essence, the things that make it good, and that gets transferred to the end product, that's what counts. It's a constant process of adapting the details to retain the vision.
So back to that original book, there is no perfect roadmap.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of winding streets.
Yeah. And you can get there through many different ways as well. Like, often the client will say, which way should I go, which contractor, or which planning route? And it's like, well, they're all valid. It's just got to choose one.
Project you've learned the most from?
I think you're learning a bit on all projects, really.
Yeah, I think if you treat every project as as something new and something that you can learn from and improve and deliver a successful outcome. I think it is the same. Every project is a learning case.
Yeah, it has to be, because the world is always changing. So if you're not learning on every project, you're just not keeping up.
Yeah. Does it make you interrogate the market more, knowing that there's been elements of the industry that have been effectively covered up or smoothed over and glossed over and maybe just slightly lazily ignored? Does it now make you as architects go, no, we can't be lazy, and actually I've got to be more intrigued and actually have an opinion of what has been portrayed as best practice? Is it best practice? And best practice is changing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the changes in the legislation have brought the architect more into the fore of decision making in the process, and I think actually a lot of clients are trying to catch up with that, but haven't quite got their head around what that really means. And it really does mean that you can say, in a way that we weren't empowered to before, no, you can't do this, it isn't safe, it isn't legal. Whereas before you could have said that potentially, theoretically, in a meeting, and someone could have contractually overruled you. That can't happen now. That's a good thing. Yeah, it wasn't legal before when that happened, but now it kind of contractually can't happen as well as in kind of tort. So that's a real seismic shift that we're in the throes of, and what it's going to actually really look like for the position of the architect in the industry, we'll have to know in about 10 years' time, in all honesty.
Yeah. New legislation with principal designers are having additional personal liability, whereas your business had a liability before, and you always have liability as an architect, but legislation has definitely shifted to put the onus on the individual to do the right thing. Same for contractors. Now there's an onus on the individual rather than the business. It's changing a lot in terms of you can't second guess. No one can be lazy. It's licensing in disguise.
Yeah, I have heard it said that it's protection of function by the back door. I think I might have said it, actually.
You could have ruled that statement. That's my statement.